In this video, I'm going to provide a brief illustration of how you can use the recode function in SPSS to recode one variable into another. This illustration is based off of um, data that is presented in Heck and Thomas's second edition of multi-level and longitudinal modeling with IBM SPSS. This is from Chapter 2. And in that illustration, they have a variable time that they are going to convert into a squared term for use in a growth curve model. So at any rate, we're going to start out. We're just going to illustrate how to create a new variable that is basically the square of the original variables in the data set. And the data is organized vertically with times of 0, 1, 2. And so basically we have students who are measured at each of these times on several variables. So this is student 1, student 2, student 3, and so forth. And then this is basically students who are nested within schools. So in their example, they basically want to create a squared variable, or time squared, in order to, in case you want to model something like a quadratic trend in terms of growth. So what we're going to do is we can use the recode option by going to transform, recode into different variables. We'll move time over to the input variables box, and then they use quad time because, again, they're going to be modeling a quadratic trend. So they're essentially squaring the time variable. They click on change, and then we'll click on old and new values. And so in this particular case right here, basically this is a really handy tool, and essentially we just are going to convert these values into the square of these values. So the square of 0 is 0. So we're going to type in 0 for the old value. That's times 0. And the new value will be 0 as well. So we'll leave that alone. Then we'll say for value of 1, the square of that is also 1. So this is the old value and new value. So we're typing those in. Then for time 2, we'll type 2 in for the old value, and the square of that is 4 for this. And we'll click on add here. And there you go. And so we'll click on continue, and then on OK, and you'll see in the data set that now we have the quad time variable. And so, another option that's not discussed in the chapter, but something that you could easily do is you could use a compute function in this case, because we're just squaring the time variable. So just to kind of provide an illustration, if you go to transform, compute variable, then we could create a new target variable called quad time as well, and then basically just move the time variable over, and then asterisk asterisk, and then 2, and that's telling SPSS to square the time variable. So, and then when we click on OK, you'll notice that that we get the same thing as before. So in short, we could do it either way, and we get the quad time variable. Using the compute function, though, only would make sense if you are computing the square of some number, as we have done right here. But a lot of times you can be recoding something, and you won't necessarily be using the compute function. To give you another example, let's say that I wanted to model time 0 and 1, treat that as sort of a let's say I wanted to recode time into time 0 and 1, where time 0 would reflect these two time points, time 1 would reflect this. I can certainly do that as well, just by clicking on time, and then I could say 0, 0, and then 1 to 0. And then I could say, 2 to 1, and there you go. Now this obviously doesn't make a whole lot of sense necessarily, but this is just kind of showing you the queue function itself and why this can be useful. So there's our new variable there, where I just basically converted these two values to 0 and this value to 1.